Content is content, and of course, I'm Izzy. So, this comes from us from Kotaku.com. And of course, from what I'm reading is Chrono Trigger Remake Dragon Quest Yuji Horii RPG. Now, before we get into it, everybody who's anybody knows that if you're an RPG player like I am, this is like the most sought after, overplayed game done on any YouTube channel in existence. And most people will worship the ground it walks on because it exists. And that game is called Chrono Trigger. And there have been many ports of Chrono Trigger. But some are just not loving the mobile port of it. So let's see what they have to say, and I'll share my thoughts about it. Chrono Trigger doesn't need a remake, but I'll definitely play the hell out of it. Dragon Quest creator has rumors swirling again. And this was brought to us, published. Yeah, it was published December 3rd. So it hasn't been that long. Chrono Trigger is very special. It's a bold and beautiful RPG assembled by some of the best developers working in gaming at the time. Perhaps just as importantly, it holds up remarkably well for a game that released on the SNES over 30 years ago. Go play it right now if you haven't. I promise you, it still looks great, sounds amazing, and packs a neat, evocative, one-of-a-kind story into an incredibly streamlined but satisfying time-traveling structure. I mention all this because Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, who was also one of the writers on Chrono Trigger, is once again playing coy about Square Enix plans for a remake. I can't talk about that, Horii said on the latest episode of the Koso Koso Hoso Kyoku talk show livestream, translated by Automaton. When asked if anniversary events for the SNES Classic might be leading up to a bigger project, he continued to say he couldn't talk about it in a way that he heavily implied there was something to talk about. Wait, if I did say that, you'll figure it out, he added. And followed by, don't ask and I'll get in trouble. So, they're in the middle of a remaster frenzy. Of course, you've seen it. You've seen Dragon Quest. You've seen Live a Live. You've seen, God, Octopath Traveler. And let's not forget about Final Fantasy. Oh yeah, the flagship that started all this mess. This mess. Yeah, the one game that was basically their savior. Because remember, Square was a failing company at the time, and they were about to throw in the towel if Final Fantasy did not show up with something that just put them on the spot, and they did. So Final Fantasy, of course, is basically the flagship. So it only seems fair, only seems right. So we're continuing, like so. This might feel like a bit of smoke with no fire, if not the fact that Horii has done this before. At Napoli Comic-Con, the designer appeared to let slip that Chrono Trigger was getting remade before following it up with "You have heard nothing." There was video, first-hand accounts from attendees, but it was all a bit messy due to parse due to translation and audience reactions. Square Enix later followed up to say that Horii has been mistranslated, which only convinced fans that the remake was even more real. But while I absolutely believe at this point that Square Enix is working on something related to Chrono Trigger, what exactly it will be and when, if ever, it'll see the light of day is hard to pin down. Square Enix has released all sorts of remasters and remakes, running from simple HD remakes, Chrono Cross, to HD 2D gloves, Dragon Quest III remake, to complete 3D overhauls, Final Fantasy VII remake. There's even Horii's own upcoming Dragon Quest 8 reimagined. No, Dragon Quest 7 reimagined. Dragon Quest 7 has been around for how many times? Two? PS1 and 3DS. And I still haven't finished that. Or yeah. Yeah, come to think about it, I haven't finished 9. I need to replay that. I might do it as a stream. I don't know. Which falls somewhere between those last two categories. In other words, Chrono Trigger could get a straightforward pixel perfect style upgrade or full blown reimagining. My money's on something simpler. Squeenix has shown a desire to remain pretty conservative when tampering with its classics, and doesn't necessarily have the resources to be throwing at a more ambitious remake. Then there's the fact that things like a rumored remake of Final Fantasy IX are still MIA. As it pulls from its back catalog, Squeenix seems to be less predictable with what will come out in what form. Yes, Chrono Trigger really is that good. Maybe there's a little bit of trepidation with trying to improve on what's widely considered to be one of the all-time greats. The Oddworld 2 game director Brandon Adler was recently gushing about the game with zero caveats. Let's just take the active visual and the music on that thing. He said on a recent episode on My Perfect Console, just aesthetically, the game's gorgeous on so many different fronts. I can still hear the music, the characters, they made such an impact, and they did such interesting things, even in terms of the actual systems behind them, like the technique that were being used. He also complimented the pacing, which remains unmatched in the genre. It doesn't get enough credit for it, although I think the real RPG heads will know this. The pacing on it is just amazing, he said. It's only one of the only JRPGs I can think of where you don't actually have to grind. You just play through the entire experience in which you don't have to worry about that aspect of JRPGs, which some people like that, but it's also a grind. And this is the perfect kind, it is the kind of stuff people think about when they call Chrono Trigger a perfect game, and the kind of thing that would be easy to mess up with a remake that starts reorganizing things at a deeper level than just the look and sound. The things are precious too, though. Trying to make that first glimpse of the Kingdom of Zero will be like going in decades later and trying to monkey around with Lawrence of Arabia. Good luck! But also, I would 100% use it as an excuse to go back and replay Chrono Trigger right away. Some games are just too good to be remade. Others are so good that no remake could ever take anything away from them. That's what most people do not get. Yes. The thing is this. My thoughts about remakes and or remasters, it's sort of like this. I could say it's hit and miss. Not hit or miss, hit and miss. I'll tell you the reason why. Well, for something like this, there have been many games that had the remake treatment, but it didn't seem to fly well as far as, what what it had from the original versus what it has to it now. Like you've seen Link's Awakening, you've seen Super Mario RPG, other types of games that got remade or remade or remastered. You got all these titles, all these big names. But the one thing that they fairly miss is having the charm. The charm of it, being what it was back in the day. Now, mind you, We're talking about something in 1990s. This is 2020, 2025 Borderline 6. You got games that are getting more cinematic looking. It's getting gloves at the yin yang. And for the most part, they are getting more and more expensive. Like, do you really want a game that really pushes the envelope to where you would either have to do one of the two things? You had to update your computer, or you would have to trade in your console for a higher model, or just get a new console. And the quality of gaming to this day is getting more expensive because of that. Now, could you imagine if Chrono Trigger actually did get a remake? And the prices for, say, a digital one? A digital copy of Chrono Trigger. We're going to look at something really, really quick. Okay? So, give me a hot second and I will pull up my Steam list. Okay, so we're looking at my Steam list, and as you can see, these are the games I currently have. On the side here are all the games fit to print from I should say numbers 0 to 9 to A to Z. These are all the current games I have in my library from the Steam sale. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to do that. No, I meant to do this. But these are all the games I have. And these are the games I have not even touched because clearly I hadn't had time. Seeing that my backlog is so huge, I got a few new games. And as you can see, most of them are a mixture of visual novels, RPGs, beat 'em ups, shooters, indies, and the fairly few co-ops. And these are sent from my friends over the years. Mainly through, like the stuff I barely buy my own games. But when I do, I usually get them on sale. But I want you to notice something about each and every one of them. Like, most of them are really, like, for those who don't know, most of them are basically they're a mixture of being PS2 lifted, if not anything else. Some are PS2 lifted, others you've seen them on other consoles. like the Yakuza games, of course, I have 0 to 6. And for the most part, the Yakuza games had a history from being from PS2 to now. And of course, PS2 to PS4. And then they started doing the DX versions or the Kiwami version. So you're saying, Yakuza Kiwami 2, then they're working on 3, and they're just doing all this. And of course, you're seeing Ease here. So it's like, Ease have been around since way back in the days. But as you see here, these are the recent games I got for myself. Ishin, Yuga Gotoku Ishin, P4 Arena Ultimax, Kingdom of Night, which was sent by Ryu, Rise of the Triad, Mad Max, Watchmen, Raiden, Bullet Soul. By the way, 40 sent me this. Bullet Soul and Infinite. And the ones I bought for myself were Space Adventure Cobra, The Awakening, Cyberpunk 2077. Ryu sent me Vicious of Mana. I tried Castle Evolution. I don't think it runs very good. Tried Retrowave. I don't think it runs very good. I've also done Necopara, which you kind of see on the channel. This is a free game where winds meet. Payday 2, of course. And the last game that was sent to me was by Sheena, and this was Waltz of the Wizard. But as you can tell, most of the games I have here, you see, they were sent to various friends I know on YouTube. And like I said, when I usually get myself a game, it's usually something I could say, I wanted to just say, you know what, let me just get it just for the sake of getting it. And most of these games, they're either PS2, PSP, PS2, Dreamcast based. And very few might go a little further than that, like Dreamcast, PSP, PS1, SNES, Super Famicom. Technically, you can't make this stuff up, though. Oh, and the oldest one, Nintendo. As far as we know, Nintendo and Atari. And arcade, all these stuff you see here. So therefore, I'm just showing you that just because for this very reason, you go back to the question of if it's remade, it's gonna be hit and miss, not just hit or miss. Because most people say it's gonna be hit or miss. I say no, it's gonna be hit and miss. Because for certain games, it's not going to flow. It's not going to. There's something that's gonna be missing. And I got a few more games, but they're on my external. But as far as I know, for certain games, and the same thing can go with any other piece of media you find, especially anime. You know how many people say, "Oh, I want to see an anime. I want to see a live action of this." No, you don't. So trust me, you don't want to see a live action of Akira. They've already done it, and there's some things you just don't realize. Like Hollywood has done that before. It kind of it's kind of like hit or miss. And if Hollywood could actually somewhat fairly nail something that was based clean off a manga or an anime and just get the pivotal points and just point those out, I could say they did a decent job of the adaptation. Like the last anime into live action I've seen that was fairly good was Gunim. You know it better as Battle Angel Alita. Or, Gali. It was decent. For what it was worth, it was decent. It was experimental, but it was decent. It didn't go over the limits of what anime turned to live action should be, but it's a final reminder of this is what it should be like. It's like it's setting the standard, and certain games like this, it's setting the standard of it's not perfect. I could say this: Chrono Trigger is not a perfect game. As many people would say, it is the perfect game. It's like, no, it's one of the best, but it's not perfect. Because it reminds me of Xenogears, actually. Because really, if you think about it, Xenogears kind of suffered from having one too many discs for its own good. Because really, if you think about it, Xenogears had more than enough content for itself. It just didn't need to have 3 discs. It could have, and it didn't have to go as long as it did, but it did anyway. Because I could say, yeah, if you really want a game that pushed the limit, as a Chrono Trigger set the standard to how far you can take a story, and basically just say, well, what if we did this? It's the only game that basically point out, okay, what if the main protagonist was killed? What would you do then? No other game has actually done that to that extent, to ask that question. The main antagonist killed the protagonist. What do you plan to do now? And we've seen that before. We've seen that in Phantasy Star 4. To where Alice Brangwyn was killed off by Zio. And it just simply asks, and basically the game just fourth wall the player and just say, okay, this is the situation here. You're facing an seemingly invincible enemy. He has killed off the quote-unquote main protagonist. What are you planning to do now? Even the cast. Rune points out, okay, at this point in the game, If you think you're gonna take on this dude as you are now, oh, you're sorely mistaken. Therefore, it's like the game is telling you, prepare. It's the same thing Chrono Trigger has done. It's like basically, it is one of those games that just pushes that limit to where you can take the story. The story has led you to this point, and leads up to, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue? Do you want to continue to fight, pick it up where it last left off, or do you want to set things right and go the distance, bring back this character, and do it the right way? And then afterwards, oh hey, after you beat the game, oh, then you go with the what ifs. With the New Game Plus. That is what you're supposed to do with a New Game Plus. Basically, you've beaten the game already. So, basically it asks the question, how many more ways can you beat the game? Now, no other RPG can actually do what Chrono Trigger did. Basically, Chrono Trigger has set the standard of what an RPG could do. What it has the potential to do, but it didn't. It can, but it can also can't. If it knows where it is and it's like there's a stopping point, then respectfully, respect the stopping point. And I can tell you, there are certain games, as far as remakes, that, like I said, they are mainly hit and miss. Not just hit or miss. It's hit and miss. And it's like, the one thing that has to hit is the charm. That speaks volumes. And I'm talking about from the music all the way down to the storyline. The story has to be there. There has to be no changes to the original story. I mean, it'd be cool if they got in voice acting. It'd be nice if they turn turn-based into action RPG. Or, take something from Dragon Quest. Like you're seeing it from this point of view. Something like you seen from Phantasy Star. Or many other RPGs at that time. You were facing the enemy. And, you had all these picks of attack, items, defend, run, skills, that sort of thing. But Chrono Trigger, I could say, is like the holy grail of what the RPG standard should be. Which is not to basically say, oh my god, it is the game to play. I'm like, yeah, it respectfully is the game to play, but it's also a firm reminder that as it is the game to play, it needs to be respected as the standard of what all RPGs should strive for. And that goes with the new that goes with the new generation and the next generation of RPGs. They should strive to be memorable, worth talking about, worth sharing, worth just saying, oh hey, have you played this game? And if so, do you plan to get it for yourself one of these days? Not ask the question, well, what should I think? No, that's not what should I need some recommendations. Like, no, you don't need recommendations. What you need to know is where. You need to look for yourself. And that's the problem I see with most gamers these days. They want recommendations, but they won't do the work of looking for games for their own selves. They want to be where all the cool kids are, and they want to be like, I want to get in on it. They want validation. They want recognition. I'm like, sorry, you're not going to get it from me. As I can tell you, yeah, this game has earned its right to be one of the greatest of all time. But I'm sorry, but I'm not going to worship the ground it walks on. Sorry and not sorry. But Chrono Trigger, if it needs a remake, and if it does get a remake, I'm really praying that it's being done right. Just like they did with Mana. Like, if you wanted to, that's an idea. If you want to play the original exists. But if you want to play it like a new version of it, then there's that too. Because Square Enix has basically made a good chunk of games that aren't remastered. They still exist online. You can get them if you're interested. Oh, and by the way, they're still under the Square's soft name and not Square Enix. And they were a lot more, enjoyable by then. But that's just me speaking personally. And I play a lot of obscure titles. I dig through a lot of obscure titles. I dig more than, basically make videos these days. But, it is what it is with my situation. But I thought I would share that with you. Because if it's worth checking out, I would say wait and see. Don't say anything, just wait and see. And with that, I'll see you next time with more great content, and I hope you look for it. Until then, I've been your friendly neighborhood Tenkaichi, and I'll see you next time with more great content. Until then, take care.